Hello, everyone. Just want to make sure that you all understand how to pull in data from an external source. And I know that there have been some questions about that, and I just want to clarify exactly what's happening here. What we've done in the past is we've taken a table, or database, if you want to talk about all the tables, created an ERD, created a database design based upon end user requirements. And we developed this database using the first two rules of database design, and then also including the rule of normalization, which is the easiest one, is to make sure that all tables are single themed. Single themed meaning in the institution table, I have an INS ID, INS name, INS street, INS city. Everything in the institution table belongs there. Whereas if you go to source, you see that I have source ID, user ID, institution ID, ACT ID. Those don't look like they belong there. Source start date, source end date, source notes, those belong. Now when we say single theme tables, if these attributes, user ID, institution ID, activity ID, are not foreign keys, then they don't belong there. That's the easiest way to do normalization without making it complicated. Just look for single themed tables. If these attributes are not foreign keys and they don't have any relationship, direct relationship with the source table or indirect relationship as a foreign key, then they need to come out and go into their own table. All right. As per the requirements, all tables are supposed to have 5 records except for the transaction table. And you can see when I open up the transaction table that I don't have any records here. Okay. In my user table, I have 5, and my account table, I have 5. Or I should say, I don't know why I said activity before. I meant account. And my institution table, I have 5 as well. Okay? So, and in category, I have 5. Okay? Now, and a couple things. I know some of you are still having issues with the second rule of database design. And by the way, don't feel that it's out of the norm, because that's where most database designers get into problems. All database designers know that a relational database, if it is a relational database, all tables must have a primary key. Primary key cannot be null, and by definition, a primary key must be unique. That's the easy part. You could see here that they're all null, and the only way that the primary key works here when it's null is because we have auto increment turned down. So when we forward engineer this, it will automatically contain a value 1 through whatever number that we have created here. So I have 5 records here. The auto increment functionality will automatically create values 1 through 5 in the primary key category ID attribute. All right, now some other things. The referential integrity. So if I have 5 records in institution, 5 records in user, 5 records in account, what are the only values that I could have for a foreign key in source? Well, the only values, gang, are these. I can only have values 1 through 5. Notice I didn't use all the values for a user ID. But 1, 2, and 3 are valid values. Notice I didn't use all the values for institution ID. They're all valid values because they're less than 5. But notice I did use all my account values. Now, also notice, as I mentioned in class, that the composite, let me bring this up a bit here. The composite values for user ID, institution ID, and account ID must be unique. So I cannot have 111 listed more than one time. If I did that here, it would be an error. Why would it be an error? Because in my index, as I indicated in class, we created a unique index with a name, made sure we use the drop-down menu here, made sure that the unique was selected. Then when we did that, we just selected the attributes that form that unique index, user ID, institution ID, and account ID, because we wanted to make sure that the same user from the same institution couldn't be associated with the same account number more than one time. That would be a data anomaly. Okay. Look at transaction. Transaction has no values in it, no records. Category, on the other hand, has 5 records. And we know, because the category ID is auto increment, we know when we forward engineer that these category ID values will change in from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because that only works because we have the AI auto increment option selected. Your requirement for this assignment is to create an Excel file with 10 records for the transaction table and save as transaction_data.csv. CSV stands for comma separated value. Insert the data using the following load data infile command. All right, let's talk about that. I gave you a file. This is the file right here. When I gave you one record with this data. Remember in class I talked about if we want to do auto increment that we have to use the, let me open this up into a text editor where you could see it a little bit better. We have to use the backslash capital N to get an auto increment value. And that's because in our transaction table, we have transaction ID set at auto increment. So for us to be able to do that, what we have to do, hang on here, let me copy that and paste that in there again, and just so you could see it, that's it. Backslash, not forward slash, but backslash, it's an escape character. Capital N, it must be a capital N, not a lowercase n. That will give us a null. This equals null, a null value, just like this does right here. Okay? And since we have the transaction ID as auto increment, this will work. So let me close out of this. Again, it's backslash N. And what I gave you, I provided for you one record. Now what you have to do is create your own CSV file with 9 additional records. So you have to create these. Okay? Now I want to talk about something. Now you know in our database design that the transaction date is actually a date time data type. Well, notice that in the record I gave you, the one record, it's not a date time, it's just a date. And my records that I created, it's just a date as well too. You'll see when we forward engineer this that it will actually give you a timestamp, but it'll be 00 for hours, :00 for minutes, :00 for seconds, indicating midnight of that day. All right, let's talk about the second rule of database design, because this is where everyone's getting tripped up. Notice here in the transaction table, let me make this a little bit larger. Okay, in the transaction table, we got the source ID is the foreign key coming from the source table. There's our source ID. By the way, don't forget, gang, don't forget that if we're using institution ID is tiny int, primary key not null, unsigned, that the foreign key for institution ID in the source table must be tiny int unsigned. Notice how I have, to keep it simple, that for account, institution, and for user, I made them all tiny ints. They're all tiny ints, and they're all unsigned. So that makes my design real simple, okay? Because the foreign keys now all just have to be tiny ints, and make sure they're unsigned, because even if you have the correct values, they will not work. You will get an error. Same here. Now, in my source ID, not in my foreign keys for user ID, institution ID, and account ID, but for my source ID, the primary key is small int, pk not null, unsigned. So that means that in my transaction table, I must have small int unsigned. My category ID is tiny int unsigned. My category ID foreign key must be tiny int unsigned. Gang, they have to match exactly. Now, what do I have for records in my transaction table? Zero, zilch, nada. What do I have for records in my category table? Well, I have 5. That means I could select values 1 through 5 for category. Category is the second column. So in the Excel file, category ID would be in this column, just like you're doing inserts. Now, for the transaction table, the source ID, how many records do I have for source? Well, I go here for source. You'll see that I have 5 records. And it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now, just like I had to match my user ID, my account ID, and my account ID, institution ID, and user ID, like I had to match these 1 through 5. I have to do the same thing with transaction. So source ID and category ID cannot be any larger than 1 through 5. So I gave you this. Notice that source ID, transaction ID is the first column, right? That's the first column right here, okay? 10 records. All you have to do here is just click on this, hold the placeholder down, and drag it down here, automatically copies. You're done with that. Nothing needs to be done there. Here, you have to make sure that you get the values of 1 through 5. Now, how can I create 10 records? Well, that's simple. You can create more than 10 records. Because you have the values of 1 through 5 in both the category table and the source table, you have values 1 through 5 for primary key. Here's my source table. I have values 1 through 5 here. That means that I have the capability of creating 25 records. 5 times 5 is 25. Notice how I can easily create 10 records. Let me go back here so you can see both. Notice my source ID right here. Here's a source ID column. Going back to transaction, here's my category ID. The third attribute. There's category ID. Notice that I'm not selecting more than 1 through 5, and I still have 10 records. So 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, 1 5, 2 1, 2 2, 2 3, 2 4, 2 5. I could create 15 more records if I wanted to. 3 1, 3 2, 3 3 3, 3 4, 3 5, ad nauseum. Here's my tran type. Remember, we only have two, debit or credit. Here's my tran method. Remember, I gave you those, and it could be an ATM, a POS, point of sale, a check number. Here I'm saying it's a transfer from one account to another. Here, bank means that I'm doing a bank transaction at the bank. Here are the numeric values, the tran amount. And here is the date. Notice there's no hours, minutes, or seconds. And we're going to keep the date the same here, gang, like this. So you're going to have a date for a month, day, and year. And what's going to happen is we're going to automatically format that to the correct data type for MySQL. Okay, so here are my dates, and here is for notes. Notice I don't have everything for notes because in our design, everything cannot be null except for notes. Notice there's an outline. Tran date is filled in, so it cannot be null. Tran amount cannot be null. Tran method cannot be null. Tran type cannot be null. Neither with the foreign keys. And of course, by definition, primary key cannot be null. All right, so that's that. I got my records right here. I got 1 through 5. I'm doing my referential integrity. I'm making sure I don't go further than the values of 1 through 5. What's the next step? Well, all I need to do, as long as you got the code and the dates like this, in this order, and you save it as a CSV file like this, okay? You save it as transaction_data.csv. What you do next is you upload it to your DB directory. So let me do that right now. On a PC, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go using Secure Shell. Mac users, you can use Terminal to do this. SSH into Terminal. We've already done this before, so you could just go back to see how to SSH. And then if you want to FTP a file, you could use FileZilla or CyberDuck. Here, because I'm on a PC, I'm going to use the Secure Shell window, and I'm going to use this new file transfer window. Excuse me, it's the yellow folder with the blue ribbons. And what I'm going to do is upload, which I already did, upload the transaction_data.csv file right here. Okay, I'm going to upload that to my DB directory. Okay, so that goes into home DB. That's where transaction, and you got to change the name to transaction_data.csv. Okay, now what's next? Look at the requirements here. This is the requirements for Project 1. Now, as I mentioned to you, we could go to the class website and see how to do the load data into MySQL using external files. And this is under assignments. Just scroll down and you'll see the documentation here. I have two files. I got the transaction_data.csv file that you can download. So you can download that. Next, I got the load data_infile.sql. You could download that. Now, the one thing you want to make sure is that it doesn't contain any parentheses and the 1. Okay? So, let me show you this. I'm going to right-click on this file again like this. Try to save it. Here's what it's going to try to let me save it as. I'm going to explode this a little bit larger for you to see. Here it is. Here's what it looks like when I tried to save it. The first thing you have to do to save it is get rid of the parenthesis and the 1. Okay? Because the code I'm giving you will not work with that. So load_data._infile.sql, that's what you want to save it as, and that is what you want to upload it as well. There's nothing else you need to change to that. The code can work exactly as is, but it needs to be uploaded not to your DB directory, but to your main directory right here. Your home directory. When you log into the CCI server, you want to load it to your home directory where your FSU ID is, right here. Not mine, of course, you can't access that, but your FSU ID, your home directory, that's where you want load underscore data underscore infile.sql. Transaction is right here. Okay, that's in the DB directory. But load underscore data underscore infile is in your home directory. Okay, you got that? You got the load underscore data underscore infile.sql. You created your 10 records. You saved that. You got them just like this, formatted. You got your first rule of database design. You got your primary key. You got your referential integrity because it cannot be more than 1 through 5. So you got the values there for your source ID and for your category ID correct for these attributes, source ID and category ID. Now all you have to do at this point is log in. And I'm going to log out here just to show you what you need to do. Okay, I'm logged out. What you need to do is follow the instructions number 6. You need to log in using this command. If you don't use this command and everything else is perfect, it will not work. I'm going to show you that right now. So I'm going to secure shell in. I'm going to go to my user account and I'm going to use my Blackboard password. I'm logged in. I'm going to log into MySQL like I normally would. MySQL-u, my username, hit enter, my password, and I'm in. Good. Okay. Everything should work now, except let me forward engineer this. Make sure you got generate insert statements for tables, drop objects before each create object, generate drop schema, and add show warnings. Gang, if you don't have this checked, you're not going to have any records. So make sure generate insert statements for tables is checked. Do next. Also make sure that you have a connection, because if you don't have a connection, it won't work either. So test your connection first. If you're on the wireless on campus, make sure that you are using the guest account. If you're having problems with the FSU secured, just switch over to the guest account. Okay, I'm going to do, none of these should be checked except export MySQL table objects. That should be checked. Click next. Click next again. And it should work as is. We'll see if it does. And it does. Good. So we did that. I'm going to here use mjoet. And I'll just do show tables. We got tables, and I'll do a select all from transaction. Nothing, no records. Okay, there's 2 ways you can approach this. Number 1, you could do this. You could directly, without even using load data, without using the file that I talked about. In other words, without using this file here, let me put that off to the side. Without invoking this command for this file, I could just copy and paste this like this, which I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this, go back to my window here. Let me put that over here. Go back to my window, paste it, and let me do a select all on that table. What happened? No records, and I have this error. Let me put this error in a text editor so you can see it. I'm going to copy this, open up Emacs, paste that error, make it larger. The used command is not allowed with this MySQL version. It's a pretty innocuous, not very helpful error message. But if you look up error 1148, you'll see a little bit further information. Just do an internet search on 1148, MySQL error 1148. You'll see a little bit more further information on that. But bottom line, the problem was I forgot, well, on purpose, just to show you that you must use the option -- local infile 1. Now let's make this super simple. I'm just going to copy this so I don't type anything incorrectly. Now I know my FSU ID isn't FSU ID, but I'm going to copy this anyway, directly from the website. I'm going to go back. I'm going to exit out. And now I'm going to try again. I'll paste this in here. Now instead of FSU ID, what I'm going to do is put my username, but make sure I have the local -infile equals 1 means true, turn it on. And I'm going to put my password back in. Now I'm logged in again like I normally would be. Use my database name, if I could spell use correctly. And then I'm going to invoke that same command again. Well, before I do that, I'm going to copy this. Just Control-C on a PC, Command-C on a Mac. I'm going to do select all again on transaction. Notice no data. Let me do this now. And let me go back up, select all on transaction. And there are my 10 records that I had in my .csv file, the comma delimited file. So that's one way you could do it. Just copy and paste it. But the easier way to do this, particularly when you want to run the command from, say, other files that you have uploaded, is to do what I showed you, and that is to put the load data in file that you have here that I gave to you. There's nothing you need to do except to make sure that's the name of the file when you upload it. Take the parenthesis out, take the 1 out. It should be load_data_infile.sql. Put that in your root directory right here. And now I'm going to do this. I'm going to forward engineer this again, so I could show you a clean data set, and show you that I also don't have any values in that transaction table. And when I do that, instead of just copy and pasting the command, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the source command. In that source command, before I invoke it, I'll show you again where you can find that. You can scroll up here to Notes and right-click on Useful Links. Right-click on Useful Links. And when I go to Database Resources, the command is right here. Now you're not going to use db/premier, and in fact it's not in the DB directory, but you're still going to call that file either this way with the source command or the \period. So what do I want? I want this file right here, load_data_infile.sql. Let me go here. Let me select all from transaction. Notice I don't have any anymore. I don't have any data anymore because I just forward engineered my databases, I should say my tables, and transaction didn't have any data. So I don't have any data here. Now what I'm going to do is this, \period load_data_infile.sql, and it has to be, gang, again, spelled exactly as is. Notice I'm not calling the DB directory, but in my DB directory, what this file is calling, load data infile, it's calling this transaction_data .scv file. So this file is calling this file. Okay? Now, when I hit enter, again, notice, let me make that a little bit larger for you. Invoking this command. Let me invoke the command. There it is. Let me invoke the command so you can see it first. Here it is. I'm invoking the command. Let me copy it. You can see there's 10 records entered. Copy that. Let me paste it into here. Let me make it larger. That's the command right there. Okay? And when I go back here, gang, and I select all from transaction, I got my 10 records again. See, there is no difference from this command right here from this command right here that I copy and pasted. No difference from this, as you can see, that I have up here. They gave me these 10 records, and I also did it with this command right here that gave me the exact 10 records. All right, gang, if you have any other questions, please post them to the discussion board. And hope you all have a nice evening, and see you all in class.